Hello and welcome back to Josh's Cookhouse. I'm Josh. Today's video is another part of my Brisket 101 series on how to trim a brisket for your next backyard barbecue. First things first, when you're trimming a brisket, you're going to want a nice large cutting board like this one here that's not going to have your meat overhanging. Next, you're going to want a pair of gloves. This will help keep your hands clean while you're trimming a brisket. Lastly, you're going to need a sharp knife for the job. I recommend either using a boning knife or a fillet knife. They both do an excellent job of trimming the fat off without taking huge gouges. You can be a little more precise with the trimming. I use Dull Strong. It's personally my favorite brand. You can find a link in the description below if you're interested in trying them out yourselves. And now that we have all our tools, we can start trimming. Now that we're ready to start trimming our brisket, first things first is I'm going to start squaring up the sides of this brisket and expose up the meat, because this brisket has a very large and thick fat cap. And so I want to be able to see the meat, and then I can see how fat this fat cap is. That way it can get down to a 1/4 inch. As you can see, after that first slice, I'm still not exposing any muscle on this brisket, and so I'm just going to keep slowly working it in until that muscle is being exposed and I can see how thick this fat cap really is. After making the second pass, I was starting to get pretty disappointed in this brisket since the fat cap was so large. However, this was the best brisket my local grocery store had to offer. Alright, as it turns out, this brisket has a lot larger fat cap than I was expecting, so I'm just going to keep working it in until I start seeing more of the meat exposed. You may think that all this fat that I'm slicing off this brisket is going to go to waste, but I like to store it in a baggie, put it in the freezer, and make tallow with it later on. As you can see, the fat cap on this brisket is well over 1 inch thick in some areas. As I said, it was pretty surprising to see how thick it was. Most briskets you will buy will not have a fat cap nearly this thick, so your brisket will require a lot less trimming than what I needed to do on this one. Now that I can see where this meat is exposed at, I'm going to flip it over and square up the other side a little bit before I start working on the fat cap. One thing I noticed while I was squaring up this edge of the brisket was that I definitely could have gone a little farther in, but it was a little hard to see as I was leaning over the meat and didn't quite get a good view of it, but it's something I fixed later on. Now that I got both sides kind of squared up nicely, I'm going to start trimming down the fat cap until it's about a 1/4 inch thick. And as you saw on the other side, we got quite a ways to go. I just want to say sorry for some of the extra background noise in this video. My twin daughters at the time were only a couple of weeks old. Started throwing a little bit of a hissy fit when I said that the brisket was going to be done for a couple more hours, and they're pretty hungry. If you can see this little part here, this little mohawk sticking up on the brisket, feel free to cut that off as well. That's going to dry up fast and burn up a little bit, so I'm just going to remove it. As I'm still trimming up the fat cap, I'm also going to work on rounding out the flat a little bit and getting rid of any muscle that's not as thick as the width of my thumb. As you can see, some of this is nice and thick, but as we get down to this edge over here, it starts getting really thin and fatty. That's mostly just going to burn up and dry out, and we're going to get rid of that. As you can see here, the fat cap is getting nice and thinned out down to about 1/4 inch. You know, some spots aren't a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller. That's all fine. But down here on this flat end, this brisket's about as thick as I would like. You know, it's about the width of my thumb, and we're gonna keep it right around there. And we'll continue trimming out the fat cap. Now that we got the fat cap all trimmed up down to about 1/4 inch, we have the sides or edges squared off, and we have the ends rounded off so it's nice and thick. We're gonna flip it over and work on the meat side. As you can see here, we have a really large chunk of fat. Pretty much all briskets are gonna have that, and we're gonna go ahead and remove it right away. Now if you look over here, we also have another pretty large chunk of fat that runs in between the muscles, and we're going to trim some of that down. Now we got some of these really large chunks of fats removed, we're going to start just trimming off some of this crud here. Since this brisket is just for a backyard barbecue, you don't have to worry about removing every little piece of fat or silver skin that you find. However, if this was for a competition, you definitely want to be clearing just about all of it off of there. All right, this brisket's all trimmed up. You can go ahead and give it a once over if you want real quick, but I got about as flattened out as I can to make sure it gets an even cook. But it should be ready for the next step. Prepping it is going to be putting a binder on and seasoning it, so be on the lookout for that video when I put one up. And if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see any of my recipes or any other cooking tips, go to joshscookhouse.com. It'll be in the link in the description below. See you in the next video.